Hello and welcome everyone to our VistaTech Life Sciences in Focus podcast. Fascinating conversations with global life sciences experts. So this is a space where we interview life sciences experts once a month, and I'm your host, Karen Tkaczyk. Today we have a marvelous guest, Aman Khera, VP of Regulatory Science, Strategy and Innovation at Worldwide Clinical Trials. She's a fellow of both RAPS and TOPRA, and all in all, dare I say, a bit of a disruptor. Aman and I connected at the 2023 RAPS Convergence Conference, where Aman was one of the keynote speakers, and she and her colleague Sarah Bly also gave a very insightful session on diversity in clinical trials. And that's enough from me. We want to hear from Aman, so let's dive in. It's a pleasure for me to have you here as my first guest for this new project. Let's start with introductions for those who don't know you, your origin story and your current position, and then we'll take it broader after that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Karen, for inviting me to this podcast. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, right? So, yes, I am the Vice President of Regulatory Science, Strategy and Innovation here at Worldwide. I've been in the industry for, I'm just going to say that quietly, over 28 years. Right? So
once you get past 20, you like to stop saying the number, don't you?
Exactly. And so it's like, okay, nearly 3 decades. That's even more scarier, right? Of experience, all in the CRO space in global regulatory affairs. And my origin story is such that when I was over in the UK completing my medical biochemistry degree over in London, I was thinking about what I wanted to do as a career. And I'd done that degree, which was in the UK, you consider it a sandwich degree, where you take either 6 months off in the second and third year, because it turned into a 4-year course then, right? Or you take a full year out, because I wanted to see what I wanted to do. What I did know quite early on, it appealed to me, the business sense as well. I couldn't picture myself in a lab coat, right? And to make sure, okay, am I just being, I don't want to do this for some reason. I did a placement in a laboratory, in a research laboratory, actually. And I found it was great insight, but that's not how I wanted to carry on, doing the PhD route into academia or something like that. And it was actually at my university where I went into the careers office, because, every university has those and things. Yeah, as you do, right? And I was just pottering around on the shelves and things, and I found a leaflet, which was it was the British Institute of Regulatory Affairs, BIRA, right? Interesting conversation about that journey, but and it talked about careers of regulatory affairs. And I started to read it, and I saw the connection between science, medicine, healthcare, and the business sense as well. And it really appealed. But when I said to the careers officer then, right, I said, look, this is something I'm interested in, I was actually told, no. You can't do that, because people traditionally go into regulatory affairs after they've done something else, right? They've done this and things. I was like, okay, well, let's see what happens. So that was kind of in the, I think the 3rd year and things, when I was looking for my new placement, right, to happen. And the placements there were so many different placements going on, but they were all in laboratory settings. And me being a little bit stubborn, I guess you could say, and said, look, I don't want to do another placement where I'm not going to learn anything or enjoy myself, and that's not going to help me in what I want to do. The careers office was really good, actually. We had a great network, and they looped me into the quality the quality assurance department, right, in what was then Grand Metropolitan Foods that owned Pillsbury, Haagen-Dazs, Green Giant and everything, and it was local as well. So that was my first kind of exposure, I guess, to regulations, right? You know, the food regulations, the ISO regulations, all those kinds of things. And it was fascinating, you know, and I really liked that. And that really, to me, confirmed what I wanted to do. So when I graduated, it was in the, what was it, New Scientist magazine,
I used to read that
CRO.
as well.
Yeah, I did, right? You know, we used to read that, and I still see that actually out and about a little bit, I think, right? Along with Scientific American. I applied for a job in a big CRO. And I was armed because of that kind of professional placements that I had during my degree and the education that we had as well, armed with my CV, you know, I knew how to dress and kind of spoke to every single person in that room of that open evening, right? Made sure I connected. And they were looking for, I guess you could say, early, like raw graduates that weren't really exposed to anything. And, you know, I graduated in July. By October, I was already in a job, right? So it was, I understand, right time, right place, luck, everything like that, right? That happens and things. So
preparation brings luck.
Preparation, yeah, true, right? Because I was literally very armed with everything, and I knew how who I wanted to speak to. And at that time, now I'm really showing my age, you know, what used to be on the internet, because I actually remember that CRO, they had like, much like every other company, they had very static pages, right, on the internet. So there wasn't actually much to know and things, but what I could glean, you know, I covered it, I researched it, I learned about ICH, you know, Declaration of Helsinki, all those kind of basic regulations that we all need to know. Impressed them, got the job, and that was me, you know, starting my career in regulatory affairs. And now I'm here, like fourth CRO, right? As such, my previous CRO was a company that I joined that had 1,500 people in it, and by the time I left, it had 16,500 people 17 years later. Right. So I've seen growth, and some people say, well, you were in a company for 17 years. And I also remind them that I wasn't doing the same job for 17 years. Right. You know, different things, different opportunities. And it's really reinforced. I love regulatory and I love the clinical research industry as well. And I stay in this because I feel it's yes, I get paid, right? I get compensated, but it's also an act of service for me personally about, you know, helping patients, because although we're not sitting at, you know, the forefront, the frontline, you know, healthcare workers and things, we're at the back end, I think, or the hidden end, right? And so we don't get a chance to, you know, sometimes get exposed to patients directly, right? But we're doing so much work behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Right? And it sounds like you really have your raison d'etre, your why is fundamentally met by what you've been doing, right?
Completely.
And what's not to love about that, right?
Yeah, it's funny. People ask me, it's like, oh, you need to start, you know, what are you going to do when you eventually retire? I'm like, well, I'm not retiring yet, so why are you asking me that, right? But
you're way too young for that, Aman.
I know, I am completely. And then they say, but you know, what do you, you know, what kind of things are you going to do? And it was actually my husband said, he actually said to me, and it was actually last night, he goes, I know you. He goes, you have work to do and you're not going to stop. All right. So, and I said, yes, you're completely right. I'm not going to be one of those people that sits there and going, okay, working life over, you know. So that's me thinking for the future already, because how can I help make a difference? And I think to the point, we can't do it all else. This isn't a case of like, how can I help and I'm the only one to help, right? This is a case of what can we do to make the industry better? And the reason why I look, I've worked in this clinical research space for many, many years, right? I've seen what works, what doesn't work. I've seen growth. I've seen cutbacks. I've seen all those kinds of things that happen in the clinical research space. And where I've landed now at Worldwide, I can't tell you, it's like the dream job for me, because I get to just step into spaces to continue to make a difference, right? And yes, of course, I have a deep foundation in regulatory affairs, right? But regulatory affairs is broadening now, that scope.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, completely.
Yes, speaking of how you've seen things change over that career, right? Regulatory affairs has changed hugely and broadened hugely with the diversity piece, hasn't it?
Yes.
Among other things.
Yes.
Among other things.
Completely. And the key is, for me, when I think about regulatory, how sometimes that voice is quietened, right? As we're so essential. Look, we're in this industry because it's a regulated industry. So you need your regulators. Of course, we're answering to agents like, governmental regulators, but the industry regulators are going to help you. They're the ones that are going to help, sponsor companies present their, new drug or, a refined, therapy or something to the agency. So it's regulatory, speaking to regulatory, right, as such. And even when there's new technologies coming in, whether it is a biological technological platform or it's a AI model or something, right? It's your friendly neighborhood regulator that's going to that's going to be presenting that. So that's why it's always been important for regulatory. They do the quiet work, right?
Yes.
But they can also be, if you don't keep that voice or that, give them that seat at that table, they can also run risk of your product development being stopped because you haven't engaged in having that regulatory voice, right?
Right.
And
you haven't brought the regulatory team in early enough in the process. You've left them out. You think they'll just check some boxes at the end.
Yeah, we'll just do the submissions. That's all we're doing. No, we're a lot more strategic than that.
Exactly.
Now it's early and continual engagement with regulatory agencies. That is key. And there are so many different mechanisms to do that, right? So, I mean, that's where I found my sweet spot at Worldwide, to be honest, right? It's, to help sponsor companies that are coming into our doors, right? And asking for, look, we need help. And that's from a range of, a range of sizes of companies located all across the world. And we need to think about, how to help them with the right information as well. It's not just the hard intel, right, that you can find on a website. It's the soft intel about the experiences we've gained, because there's so many different products coming through our door. So yeah, it's regulatory is my playground. And then again, so is the CRO space, and so is clinical research. So yeah, it's a big playground. Yeah,
it's a big and fascinating playground, and you've made your mark in it, and you're wise and have interesting things to say about it. So that's marvelous. So you said it's continuing to, regulators continuing to evolve. Do you think that it's generally true that companies are involving regulatory earlier on and more strategically, or is that still that vary widely from place to place?
It varies widely, right? I think people understand in this industry that, we need that voice, right? But remember, when you're thinking, say, if you're a virtual biotech, right, you're starting up, right? Sometimes regulatory isn't that resource that you're going to hire in immediately, because we might not be thinking about an actual regulatory agency deliverable. However, I say you still need that advice, and that's what CROs and consultants can come into place, where, for companies that, are thinking about, okay, how much are we going to spend? You still need that early advice. And I've also seen, over the years, I've been exposed to sponsor companies still being a little bit shy and reticent about approaching regulatory agencies with that early and continual engagement, right? So
Right.
this is where I and other regulators are kept very, very busy, right? Because we're trying to persuade them and also handhold them, right? To say,
Right.
look, we can guide you through this because we're so exposed to this over and over again, right? And we the learnings that we gain from our exposure is only going to help you too, right? Because we have that soft intelligence, right? About
Absolutely.
that understanding the tone and tenor of a particular, let's say, a division at the FDA or another regulatory agency. So we are exposed to that a lot more frequently. So
Of course you are.
we're able to share that as well. So like I said, I love what I do. I love giving the exposure and regulatory kind of, when I speak to fellow regulators, in our company as well, they have so much wealth of knowledge, and to be able to share that with project teams and everything, that's where we want to get to. Because, and I've said this frequently before, actually, when regulatory, traditionally has been known as the people that love to say no, right? We're not
Yeah,
there.
we've all heard it, unfortunately.
We've all heard it, right? Completely. Or they're just the people, like, we need them, but they're the ones that push the applications in. Well, actually, there's a lot of strategy involved in that, pushing those applications in as such. And to have that, I guess you could say, that collaboration with your counterpart at the regulatory agency as well. So no, we're not the ones that like to say no, we're the ones in the know, right? So that's something that, and it's something that's key for, it doesn't matter what size the company, where you are, where you're located, how clinical research is clinical research. And there are guidances, there's regulations, there's draft documents. So to kind of navigate that pathway, you need that, like I said, your friendly neighborhood regulator, right, to help optimize that development for you. So, but it has evolved, like regulatory overall, and I've seen over the years, yes, there's automation, right? Absolutely. We're trying to make the work that we do, the repetitive tasks that we do, right, faster. And yes, we can absolutely use technology for that. But when it comes to strategic thinking, look, we're not putting these submissions out onto well, we are kind of, but putting it into a server at regulatory agencies, portals, and no one else is looking at it. We've got humans on the other side, right? Looking at these as well and asking the questions through their lenses, their experiences. So it's like you need your counterpart. But now with the advent of AI, like, we've got the FDA, EMA, they put their guidance out about AI.
Yep, they have,
which they so welcome, because I've been looking at AI from okay, how does this change this, all spaces that we're in, but particularly in clinical research as well. Again, it's another part where we have to upskill and understand these things as well. So there's a lot of regulators that are upskilling in this as well to see how it impacts or could impact. And I'm not talking about negative impact, right? As well, because regulators are always looking for holes and gaps, right? But also thinking about how could this work? How could this be smarter for everyone? So, it's been evolving, but one of the biggest things I think over the past few years that has changed is the requirement, or the ongoing requirement now, for diversity action plans as such from the FDA and how that works. So that has broadened out my scope of responsibility, and all regulators' scopes of responsibility when they're submitting to their IND, for example. And other countries are looking at this too, right? So it's it's a passion that I've been able to kind of hook on to, continue on with that for sure.
Yes. So let's so thinking along those lines. So beyond regulatory, you work professionally towards health equity for global communities.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about how you came to feel so strongly about that.
Always felt strongly about that, Karen, to be honest, right? And over the years, applying for clinical trial applications in different countries, seeing sometimes countries are missed out, no regard, and this is pretty early on actually, no regard to thinking about translations at the site level for patients, really piqued my interest as well, right? Really, really piqued my interest because there was a great mentor that I came on early on in my career, and he had said, don't ever forget, right? We're supposed to be helping patients. And imagine everything that you do, make sure it is of the highest integrity. And also imagine, what if that was my family member? And that really grounded me, actually. It humbled me, it grounded me. And every time I've had a difficult conversation, for example, with a sponsor company that is thinking of something, but we open up and say, well, did you think about this? Or what are you doing for the patient? It sparked my interest over the years when I thought about country selections, site selections and things, but also knowing that there are communities within so many countries, right, that aren't really catered for, don't know about clinical research, don't have access to it. And when we're thinking historically about, sites, we go to the same sites over and over again. We have the same patient populations, right? But then are we really adjusting to the globalization, right? So now we've moved to where, and I'm on Visible Sikh faith, obviously, right? And I come from the Sikh community, and that Sikh community is all across the globe, right? We're not just in, Punjab, India, and everything. We have strong communities in all the major countries, actually. And I kept on thinking, well, hang on a minute. I don't quite see how, if there's elderly population, for example, and you're trying to recruit in and you haven't touched base, well, they would find it so difficult if you haven't got the basic information translated into Punjabi, right?
Absolutely.
And then you're coming in, and is it really a public health or, a responsibility to have that documentation and translate that yourself and things when or are you going to just swoop in to do helicopter research? We know the stories, right? We don't even
We
need
do
to go
know the
into
stories.
them, right?
I know them
We know
intimately.
them. Yeah, we know the stories, and that's why, it was always a growing. It was a niggling thing, right? And I'd reached out I've been in this space for a long time, and when a few of us, like-minded people were kind of reaching out and asking, well, did we think about this? We know it's not really important mandate-wise or things, but it is important to the patients. And if you're trying to get more patients, maybe we need to be creative. But honestly, Karen, we were hitting with brick walls. And it was just brick walls, and
because there was no mandate unless it's a mandated informed consent form or something else later in the stage.
Completely. And then I thought about my own community, right? And I kind of looked at what was happening in the UK, where I'm from, in Canada, where I'm based right now, right? And then also the US community, and then also the community over in India, in Punjab particularly, that we're not getting that access to clinical research as a care option, right? Because no one's telling us about it. So I volunteered with a group, Sikhs in Clinical Research, and I'm an advisor there to help kind of think about not just the workforce, to bring diversity, like different lenses into the workforce of clinical research, but how can we help sponsor companies think about reaching out to faith groups, right? For example, right?
Absolutely.
Different minorities. So LinkedIn frequently, and we talk to other in groups, in clinical research groups, which is
in groups.
We're in the same boat, but we all have different needs, right? So and that's been really important. And it's funny, this is why I'm so lucky to have landed out worldwide, because it was the conversations that I had with our CEO, right? Talking about these things, and he got it. And here we are now thinking about Okay, well, guess what? The FDA put that updated guidance back in April 2022. We're still waiting for the final guidance, right? That should be coming out. Hopefully, it should
With
come out.
bated breath, we are
Bated breath.
waiting.
Yeah, because there was lots and lots of comments that went into that. Like the industry really gave some brilliant comments. So, of course, then Fedora came in, and that was the, US Congress forcing FDA now to mandate, right? This is what's going to happen. And, some people will say, well, why do we need to do this? And I say, this is the only way this industry was going to make a difference and move that needle forward. And don't get me wrong, there have been some fantastic sponsors that I've been exposed to that think about that right from the very beginning. And they're so conscientious, and we're kind of helping them when they're thinking of putting their pre-IND meeting packet together. And we're saying, look, let's ask those questions. But this isn't just a US thing. This is a global thing. And when you're recruiting patients from global, like from the global arena as such, then you get into a few different complexities, because some countries don't allow you to collect this data due to data privacy, GDPR regulations for race and ethnicity, for example, right? Then there are other countries that are thinking, well, we don't believe in these terms. We have other terms, so it's a complicated, complex environment. And this is where we've now broadened our scope in regulatory affairs. So those lines of different functions being responsible for different things are blurring, right? So,
Yes,
for example,
I've
when
seen
I'm
that
thinking,
happen.
right, it's happening a lot more, and
Yes,
it's a
I see it happening
thing.
in front of us. Yes,
Yeah, it's
absolutely welcome. Yes, you're
a
quite right.
welcome change. When we're thinking about this, I'm frequently talking to the head of patient recruitment and inclusion, our diversity and inclusion experts. I work really greatly, like you've seen Sarah, there's like other people in our company as well that do things. We are doing, I guess what you could say, the quiet work, right? Because we're not going to sit there going, job well done, brilliant, this is what we did, right? We want to make a change for the patients, right? And this doesn't happen by sometimes just showcasing it all, but really going back to the science, and then making sure that agencies, they are able to see we are being inclusive of populations. And race and ethnicity is just some of the dimensions of diversity, right? Remember, you saw this at the RAPS Convergence, how we kind of broke down like the different intersections and how we need to be inclusive. And I'm even at that point where I say, when we're working with our colleagues and working with sponsor companies, to say, think more creatively as well, right? Well, this is where FDA, for example, are asking, like, we want to know how you can help move that needle, and we will guide you, but look, it's on you, right? You need to be monitoring this. We don't want to get to the point where, you come to submitting for your NDA or your BLA or something, and you didn't hit the right patient populations, right? Or the ones. So rather than doing a post-approval commitment study, let's get it right. Make it earlier. Let's make it earlier. So yes, it's a complete passion, and it's serendipitous that a nerdy regulator gets to help make a difference to patients, which all regulators want to do. Let me tell you, right?
I love it. Well, Aman, we should wrap this up. So before we go, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience? Anything you'll be at, you've read recently, anything you want to pass on?
I thought, thinking about this, immediately what just came to mind right now is sometimes we lose sight of the patient in this industry, right? We talk about patient centricity. I don't use that word personally, right? Because I don't quite know what that means in action, in real terms. But I'm moving more towards patient inclusion. And more than anything, sometimes we don't get exposed to this, even though any of us are never going to escape the journey of a patient, right? So it can happen to us, It can happen to our family members, it can happen to our friends, and usually in our clinical research space, I can tell you, we become the navigators for these people as well, right? We have to navigate
Don't
this.
we? Indeed.
We always navigating, but for me personally, I thought I knew what I was doing and putting the patient front and center. Only when it hits your door do you realize it's a completely different, you take a completely different look, right? You have your lens changes and you start looking at things in a different way. So, and from a very young age, I have been completely enthralled with medical dramas on TV. That sounds really funky. And
so you and I were both watching Casualty on the
yes,
BBC in the
Casualty,
1980s on a Saturday evening.
completely. And that carried on moving to, all the medical dramas that come out, right?
Yes,
And
I'm familiar.
it's actually a running joke in my family because my boys will say, why do you watch all of them, right? Or why do you like, and I'll just do a run sometimes and I'll just watch. And I had to really think about that and said, sometimes it's my exposure to see what other people's lenses are with how they sometimes see clinical research. Because then there'll be an odd episode somewhere, right? Or a film. And trust me, I've got a whole list of bloopers about what in clinical research, right? That TV, like and social has shown. And I said, well, people watch these dramas. It's not just a geeky thing, right? And that's what they think happens in healthcare. And we're not even talking about clinical research as a care option in healthcare. So yeah, I'm geeky, but then also at the same time, it keeps me close to, I know it's fictional, right? I get it, right? It's kind of like it's entertainment or stories and telling things, but it also keeps me a little bit, connected to the patient voice as well sometimes. I know it sounds funky, but that's how I could
No, it's
explain it to myself
lovely. It
when
sounds
I got that
natural and
asked.
authentic.
Yeah, so anything that comes on, I do watch it, but I will be raising my voice, for the patient side in many different industry events. I'll be at DIA over in San Diego later on. So I'm really looking forward to it. But if anything I could say to watchers and listeners is don't forget the patient, right? Everything that you do goes back to the patient.
And what a perfect note to close on. Thank you so much, Aman, for your insights. And to our audience, this Life Sciences in Focus podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you listen, and as well on YouTube if you would like to watch us. Please make sure to tune in again next month for VistaTech Life Sciences in Focus. Fascinating conversations with global life sciences experts.